It's the 20th of August, so I'm out here with Kane, the sun's back out, so I have a bit of an update from the garden. So I'll just give him some food while I'm out, cause yet, so plenty of them. So not be long in the winter will be here and he'll have to be shacked up inside, but he's been enjoying the sunshine, even though July was a very wet month. So just a quick update from around the garden. I've got some other footage to still upload yet. It's actually on my phone, which is basically what's been going on in between sort of end of June, I think I'm up to, and current day. There's been a few problems, just obviously, as you know, because I'm caring for my father, just getting down to the plot. But there's been some, you know, I've still had a crop, which we'll have a look at. And obviously the videos that will come will be some harvesting. I've not videoed everything because it's just time constraints of nipping down and just thinking, right, I need to do it now, and just not having the microphone with me. I've just got there and I thought, oh God, I need to dig that up. So we'll have a look around the garden so you can see how things are, and we shall have a little chat at the end about you know, what's going to happen for the rest of the year. Right, we'll start down the bottom end. So the sweet peas have pretty much finished. Been a bad year for sweet peas. I managed to get some seeds off, but it's all down to we had a real long dry spell, which didn't help things, and the soil's been funny this year, to be honest. It's not retained moisture, so I need to deal with that, obviously, at a later date. Got some seedlings. These are a bit of a later one. We'll discuss why. I've sold some more in a bit. Underneath here, it's just a bench. This with some polycarbonate. This is all the garlic under here. So I just need to trim these roots off now, and then that'll be ready for stringing, which we'll see in the video. Some more seedlings under there. Obviously, there's some more on top of the bin there, because the sun can be your enemy, you know, when it can fry those seedlings off. So they do need light, but not direct sunlight. So on here we've got some of the alpine strawberries, you know, there's hoverflies and everything are all doing the thing, pollinating. I've been picking a few. They're not like tiny things, they are quite, you know, not very big, little tiny things like that, but full of flavour. A couple of parsley plants, mint and a rosemary, Belia. Strawberries are sort of buried under these potatoes. These are just some Orla potatoes. I've got 4 of the sort of like poly pots. Don't know how they'll do, because all my spuds in tubs this year have been really, really poor. But you can't get it good every year. This has been highly productive, this little knock-up frame for the beans. Been picking these plenty, like twice a week. You know, so I've been out picking this morning. So I've had like 2 of these just off that frame. That's, you know, I think I picked the last lot probably about six days ago, something like that. This is today's picking of tomatoes. I've probably had another pick probably about same again 5-6 days ago, something like that. So I've got umpteen batches I've already sort of cooked down into a sauce. I've not finished it yet because I need to harvest me giant carrots if they're any good. Go up the garden. The Kelsey onions, I pulled them because obviously they started to rot off because of just getting pounded by the rain. So they're not massive. These are some I brought from the plot. These are where my asparagus was at the allotment. But this will get, you know, a lot of it get frozen, a lot of it goes into sauces. I've still got a load of these little tiny carrots in here I need to harvest. You know, they are, I think they're called fingerlings or something like that they're called. You know, they'll clean up though. And they're nice, you nip the top off and roast them like that, they're great. You know, so there's a tub of them there, probably about 100 in there. Polytunnel, been a tricky one here this year. Things drying out. I've had blossom and rot, which is down to watering. You know, a few days it dries out. I mean, there's your blossom and rot. They've had all the calcium and magnesium, so it is just down to irregular watering. For some reason, there hasn't been this sort of wicking motion going on. You know, usually the beds are damp and it'll wick up the soil, you know, into these pots. But for some reason, I'm having to pretty much keep the plant alive by continuously watering these daily. But I don't want to flood them because I don't want to rot the root system. But I've had a good crop off the tomatoes. You know, I've been picking them for weeks now. You know, I mean, all the trusses, all the lower trusses are all, I've cut them all off now. There's only a bit of foliage at the top. You know, so there's not long left for the tomatoes really, but I've had an absolute abundance of them. This was like one of the rejects, the Minnesota melon, because the other one just, sending the cucumbers, they just rotted off. So this one is actually, well, you can see, but there's a couple up there, tiny little things. Whether they come to anything, don't know. because I just kind of dumped it there in a pot and it's kind of worked its way through this frame, so that is where it's going to stay. Got some Tarquino pepper plants. These are a bit slow going, but they've kind of tapped in now and they're producing. But I've had problems with like a little caterpillar on everything this year. You know, on the tomato plants, eating the foliage, on the lettuce, the cabbage, all sorts. You know, you see the holes like that, and then you end up looking for a little caterpillar, and you're out here daily looking for them. You know, sometimes they'll hide right in the stem, and they just blend in so well. But there's been a nuisance on my pepper plants up the top of the garden, which you'll see as well, because they'll bore a little hole, earwigs will go in, and then the inside of the pepper rots. But so if you get them early, you're all right, which I need to cut some bell peppers. These are Apaches down here. They're kind of like just doing their own thing. I need to start picking some of them off. The little basket of fire, quite a pretty looking plant, quite hot. You know, so I'll dry all these out. I mix the two together actually. I just blend them into a powder, make a chilli powder, because I won't just sit there and have them as they are and burn my head off. I'm not a big fan of really hot stuff, but it's nice to have a jar of it when it's powdered down. This is this year's onions all drying out. These are the Santero. White onion all drying out. Don't know how many there was altogether. I think in all the onions, I think there's 182 onions in total, I think. Including the red. These are the Red Spark. Great storers. You know, I finished my last onion this year probably about, you know, I think they were good until about May, and then they started to have problems. Now this is one of the pests I've been finding. This moth. They're the culprits for laying things that just eat all sorts. So yeah, it's been a bit of a nightmare this year for them. You catch them when they're small, but there's loads of them. What have we got down this way here? We've got some seedlings, spring onions, some spring greens. They've just kind of stunted them. These are leftover brassicas from the allotment. I've got some winter cabbage, but I don't think I'm going to actually do anything over winter or in the colder months. I'm just going to have a rest. It's the spring onions here. So all the tops are drying out, and the onions underneath there. Strawberries, I need to start trimming some runners back on these, or take some more runners. The sage, I've been taking the leaves off that and just putting the oven on its lowest setting for about 20 minutes, put them on a sheet, dry them out, powder them down, put them in a jar. So I've got my dried sage. Brussels sprouts, they are forming, but they're not great. I need to get in there and take a load of foliage off, take the tops off. And then, because the tops make nice little cabbages, to be honest. This bed was the lettuce bed. I fully replanted it all up about a week ago, and I lost every one apart from two, and it was down to just 2 slugs being in there, 2 really big slugs. And that's my own fault, because I planted them out and I left the net up in one corner. So they got in through one corner and I've not spotted them. And it took them over 2 nights, they wiped the bed out. So I was a little bit annoyed about that, but these things happen. Celery, that's desperate to get, you know, picking, but it's mainly for sauces, that, so I'll use what I can sauce-wise and chop and freeze the rest. Put some dwarf French beans down here, and basically the slugs annihilate them. So it's because I've not been coming out. Usually I'll come out and it's raining. You know, I'll have a knife or a trowel and I'll see any slugs and I'll just dispatch them and leave them there, because it'll bring sort of any predators down to take them away. Once you do that and you keep up with it, it does make a difference. Obviously I can't do that at the allotment. Well, look down here, these are the raspberries. I had to make a bit of a knock-up frame, because I didn't expect them to do this year, but I mean there's plenty of fruit going to come on them. Obviously they're drying out a bit, because the sun's really hot at the moment, as you'll see in this little thing here. So I lost most of the cucumbers, and this was another reject plant that's planted out. You know, and it's had its sufferings, but it keeps trying, and I've had a few cucumbers off it. They're coming up like that. So I'm doing the same as I do with my tomatoes, I think, next year, with my cucumbers, doing the twin pot method, like that. That's just a pepper plant that's rooted through into the bed. These are all jalapenos, needing the water because the leaves are going limp, but not massive, but there's plenty on them. Once I start giving them a bit of TLC, again, you see, I mean, that's another thing, the caterpillar. You know, if you get slugs, you can see the slime trail. That melon, I had one melon, it wasn't quite ripe, but it's starting to rot off. Some it's nailed it on the vine. So I don't know, I have seen them stink bugs or shield beetles, so I don't know whether they've been in and tapped into the main vein and polished it off. We've got the giant carrots in here, which they could be split in all sorts because we had that big downpour. Some spring onions, some red like little gems. I did have some green little gems, but some attacked the stems on them. Caterpillars, same again. You can see a casualty there in the middle. You know, it's mainly the same caterpillar, like the moth caterpillar, but there's also like the ground beetle larva as well. Great big thing. Comes up and just gets in there. You can usually tell, you'll see holes in the leaves and a big pile of caterpillar poo in there, so you've got to get it out. I took all my Dukey Yorks out. These are the Musselburgh leeks that have gone in. They took a battering off some slugs, to be honest, but they seem to be just finding their own now, so hopefully Russ leaves them alone. Got a lot of fishing line. You won't be able to see it that well. That's just to try and discourage cats going on and scratching and fill the holes in, otherwise you end up with gritty leeks. A couple of leftover spring greens. They hearted up, so I took the hearts off. I've just left them for picking, mainly for cane. Obviously there's something in there, probably one of them caterpillars, because you just telltale sign, a few holes in the leaves, you know they're in there. Sweet candle carrots. They're probably the same, few splits. I need to start pulling them soon. So that's everything up here, apart from the peppers, which we'll have a look at. So I decided last year, after watering loads of pots of peppers, to try and make a bed or a mini cloche like this type of thing. You know, the plastic just basically, you know, folds over and I weight it down. So it doesn't get watered by rain, so I have to water it, but not that often. It's been much easier, but as you can see, it's had a right battering. Been coming out, picking the caterpillars off, but I've got some massive peppers on them. You know, there's plenty of them as well. You know, obviously that's like, something's made a hole there, one of them caterpillars. The earwigs will go inside, cause problems, so I'll be picking them, but I mean, some of them are massive. You know, some of them actually snapped, you know, the plant. So these are my own seed, taken from the giant bell peppers last year. You know, there's some plants that haven't done great, but there's still peppers on them. They've just been fed with just general tomato feed, rarely. They get watered once a week. I stick about 4 watering cans in there once a week, because obviously it will be wet down, you know, further down. You know, if I scratch the surface there, it is moist beneath. I put this mulch on, but I've had squirrels going in. I think when it's been raining, obviously telltale sign, nutshell. And they've been sort of like staying in there, I think. So, and cats as well. But I've got some giant peppers to go out. I mean, that's huge. That. Never had peppers that big, but it's massive. You know, and there's a lot on that for a little plant. But I did have to start taking some tops off, so I'm going to harvest some of these this week, and then obviously some of these top ones they can carry on. Like I said, I just need to keep an eye out for these. I'm hoping that, you know, it's that time of year now where a lot of the bugs burrow down into the ground and leave your plants alone to finish off, but then you've got to deal with them next year. You know, but all sorts of different sizes. Some will probably change colour, but I don't want to leave them that long. I might as well take them green, chop and freeze them and use them that way. You know, and same again there. You know, that's a slug that's done that. But it's still alright. The same again, they gnaw at the stalk. If I could find one of the caterpillars, I'd show you, but I've been going through them that thoroughly to try and get rid of them. They're actually getting pretty difficult to find now. So I think I've kept on top of them. But that's it, that's up the garden, apart from a random cucumber seed that must have fired of its own accord, so I'm going to get some unintentional cucumber, you know, this year. Little tiny things. So it's just all bonus stuff. So in a video I'll soon be pulling the big carrots, see what they're like for a bit of a laugh. And I'll blitz all them down, they'll go in my sauce. So that's it from up the garden. You know, in the polytunnel, so things are still productive. So we'll sit down and we'll have a little chat. Right, so I had a quick look around how things are going in the garden, and you know, some of the things I've harvested, you know, both from here and the plot. The potatoes I went down about a week and a half ago. I hadn't been down to them for a few weeks, and blight had hit them, and they were all kind of brown and collapsed on top, but not in a rotting mass, you know, a big mushy thing. So I hadn't intended on going down to dig anything up. It was just a routine check and pick a few courgettes, but I ended up being there for hours and I dug a lot up. I did lose quite a lot to, it wasn't blight. I think what happened is in July, because we had such a wet month, because I didn't dig the whole bed, they were all trenched done. The amount of water that came down in July sort of gathered on that bed, and then obviously in between the rows it doesn't drain that well, so it's used like the trenches as gutters, so it's kind of waterlogged potatoes. So a lot of the deeper ones were rotten, which is really disappointing because there was a lot of big potatoes, that I lost. You pick them up and they just turn to mush. And I'm convinced it wasn't blight that did it, because it happened on my second early as well. My Maris pears and my what's the ones, the Charlottes as well. And my Jazzies were a bit the same, to be honest. So I harvested them. They weren't as bad, but obviously my Orla, I was kind of banking on them doing really well. I still got a good crop, man. Overall, I think I didn't bother weighing the Jazzies when I brought them home, but when I went and I had to dig the Charlottes, the Maris pears, and I had 3 rows of Orla, I got over £200 of spuds, which is still good. But I must have lost, probably over £100. They just turned to mush, so it was disheartening. It got to a point where I thought, I don't want to dig these up, but I got them out. So I think the potato bed at the moment, which I'll go up to the plot, next week, and we'll have a look up there, see what's happening. There's still obviously the cauliflower and the broccoli that's in, and the sweet corn, and that'll be probably ready for harvesting, unless it's gone over. Courgettes, last time I went, they were mildew, they were going a bit pale looking, but I'll just leave them be. I think I've direct sold some French beans, dwarf French beans, where the onions were, just to see, I thought they're empty beds, they need covering up really, but I thought, well, I'll go up there and I'll decide what I'm going to top the beds up with and deal with them ready for prepping and shutting them down, because I'm not going to grow anything over the plot over the winter. It's just not worth it. I want to get it prepped and then stay away through the winter. I want to try and relax this winter as much as possible, because I need to, because obviously, I've got my own health issues, and some of I care for my father as well full time, so on top of everything, it's been a tough year. It's been a tough few years, to be honest, because health wise I've had problems, and it's come to light the last 12 months that I suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome, and also the sort of inflammatory response in your joints, because it's been going on for a long time, where it's not just being tired, it's being exhausted, but obviously you're running on pure willpower because things have to be done, and I think you just burn the candle at both ends. And this year I have done a lot of crashing, where I've done too much and I've paid the ultimate price, where I'm just no good to anybody in that sort of state, so obviously things like the gardening, it's been hard to keep up with. I'm not going to give up, it's, because I do this obviously because it saves money, and it's some exercise, because I won't give into it, but I just have to manage things, and obviously, the support I get from the viewers as well. Over the years, people have subscribed and they're still following now, and it's great. And obviously, some support, they donate to the channel. There's always links in the description if you want to donate. It all goes back to funding the channel to let me do this. Which is very much appreciated. Everything I get from YouTube for doing the videos goes back into doing it. It's whether it's equipment, but you don't get much for equipment, but things like seeds or doing the compost trials, all that sort of thing, it enables me to do all that, because without the donations I couldn't really do it, to be honest. It would be, I probably couldn't have the allotment if it wasn't for doing the videos. That helps pay the rent for that, because obviously, with being a full-time carer, you don't get very much off the government, it's about 70 quid a week, it's not a lot, and obviously ultimately I had to shut my business down, because I'm a self-employed plumber. I've been a plumber for nearly 20 years, and the job became difficult before COVID through the exhaustion as well. And on top of things, the band, the band's had to take a real backseat. Everything's had to sort of just go right down in how often I can do it. I'll go and do a gig, but I'll pay the price for it. you know, a couple of days after, where I'm absolutely exhausted for a day or two, you know, and I can't function proper. You get the brain fog, you forget stuff, you know. So it's you know, so I'm under some sort of consultants and stuff like that, and it no cure for it, no tablet, which is, it's horrible, because I hate feeling this way, and your mind's willing, but your body's just like, no, you're not doing it, you know, which for me is it's horrible, because I hate wintertime when you're stuck in the house, and sometimes you just feel like you're stuck in your own body. It's in like a permanent winter slumber, because it's just one of them things. You get a full night's sleep, and you wake up, and you're still shattered. And you go and do the slightest little thing, and you're shattered again. You know, so I have to pretty much, to stay awake, I have to either be stood up or sat like I am now. If I lean back or get comfortable, I'm asleep. That's it's quite a cruel thing. What triggered it, I don't know. They think, like, you know, sometimes there could have been some sort of trauma, whether it's psychological, emotional. Obviously, you know, there's been a lot gone on this last decade with losing my mum and everything, and obviously caring for my dad, and he's got health issues that are under testing. So it's all stress, which doesn't help everything. So the gardening is a bit of a sort of therapy for me, but I have to just do things as I can now. It's been hard to accept, you know, that I used to think, I've got to go to a plot and just do a big load of stuff, and I can't now, you know, and that's the reality of it. So I just have to. I'm going to downsize. I'm going to try and battle it as long as I can. It's finding a way of managing it, you know. Obviously, when you get the gaps in the weather, you'll have to do those days where they're a long day and pay the price for it. But if things are in and they're growing, you can rest then. It's a big job out there. Otherwise, it plays on your mind. You're thinking, I need to do that, and if you don't, your mind doesn't rest. So, you know, you've got to get the satisfaction from it, because that makes it worthwhile. You know, it stops it being a chore. You know, going out in the rain in the middle of winter doing stuff, you think, what am I doing? But when you get all the onions laid out and the peppers and everything, even though the failures happen, you do get a lot of successes, and that is your ultimate reward. You know, I mean, to go out and buy a couple of hundred onions, it would cost a lot, you know, and it's probably cost me in ground rent for them onions, you know, not even a tenner. You know, it's the seeds are, you know, pence really. So they'll last, so I won't need to buy any more onions, you know, until I'll probably run out by April, May next year. But I'm not bothered. I don't mind buying a few to fill that gap. You know, the leeks, I mean, if I've got onions frozen, I'll just use a frozen onion, you know. But when the salads come, it all comes around again. Some people can grow for 12 months a year. I grow in a short season, and I load up, and that tides me over then. I mean, the freezers are still full. I've still got cauliflower and broccoli from last year I'm using. So a little bit of tomato sauce that I use for bolognese and stuff, that's still in the freezer. You know, blueberries, which are converted into cheesecakes and lollipops and stuff like that. You know, so it's trying to find different things, you know, and obviously pickling. I've got, you know, jars of pickled onions and jars of pickled beetroot. So it's just preserving things, because that way then because my plot is, some of you know, it's a swamp in the winter, so I just can't really, it's just not feasible. There's too much risk of failure. So it's just not worth it. So you think, try and do the prep before, I always say the rains come, October, November, and when they come, they don't stop, and it's too wet to do anything. So you're better off getting your beds prepped and covered up. And for me personally, stay off there, and don't venture back really until kind of February, just to prune the blueberry bushes and stuff like that, and maybe uncover the beds. You know, in case I put straw, it needs topping with some compost. But I like to open the beds up about a month before I intend planting, to let any weeds sort of germinate. Because when the weeds germinate, you know it's almost warm enough. Because weeds will germinate in quite cold conditions. So the idea is let them have a bit of a month of growth, and then hoe them off, and then you put your plants in. So your plants have got the upper hand. You know, and like this year, we had the big drought and then a big kind of flood. You know, the last few years have been fantastic. You know, some of the best stuff last few years. But this year has been particularly hard in some areas. You know, that you could have. I mean, I could have left my onions a bit longer to all topple, but I knew it was too much rain, and they start to split. and it's just a problem. So it's knowing to say, you know, cut your loss and think, right, take it while it's good. A bit like when you go to a cauliflower. It's all right seeing how big it's going to get, but it'll just blow. So take it when you think that's a cauliflower, that's good enough. Take it. That way you're not losing out then. So for the rest of the year, I'm just going to keep going. Obviously, there's not so much now because, you know, it's more harvesting. You know, I'm going to be planting stuff out, but it's all bonus stuff. I don't essentially need it, you see. I mean, the salad stuff nice, you know, later on in the year, but this time of year you get things, salads can rot off, so they need good ventilation, obviously. And soil-borne pests are kind of thriving right now because they've got the moisture and the heat. You know, and lettuce doesn't really like heat, to be honest. It likes cool weather, you know, which we're coming into soon, you know, so it's time for things like rocket, you know, and your endives and things like that. They're all good for the cooler months. Beetroot, you could still do some spring onions. There's no reason to not just try something, because if it's a mild winter, you might just get that last minute harvest sort of November time. I mean, I've harvested peas in December before now. Just as a random sort of like September try it, even though it says on the packet, you know, sow in June. I thought bugger it, you know, I'll sow some, and I got a crop in December. It wasn't a massive crop, but I got a crop. You know, so it's all free food. You know, it's like I had a bad run with my peas, but you know, I can soak them in bicarb and make mushy peas out of them and stuff like that, or use them for my seed. You know, but I have got some more peas down there that are growing away. If they come to anything, you know, great. If not, it's no big deal, because I didn't pay for seeds, because there's some pea seeds from last year. So if you've got the space, keep things going if you still want to do stuff. But if not, cover it up. You know, it's fine. Just do things in your own pace, which is what I'm having to learn to do now. That you don't need to be constantly at it. It's knowing to say I've got enough, and if you've had a good couple of months and you've grown enough to last you the months, have a rest, do a bit of prep and planning. You know, because there's always the following year. You know, but every year can be different, so you can't always sort of like, I did this last year, that'll work this year, because it doesn't work that way. You know, you learn that over years. So that's it for this video. Like I say, it's just you know, there'll be some videos coming up. I just need to access all the footage of what I've got, you know, from harvesting certain things from the plot, and little updates from there, and try and make a video of it, because I've got some footage on my phone, some's on my laptop, because I have to be careful when I'm doing my laptop, because it's a bit old, and I've had loads of problems with it, you know. So luckily this year it's not had any real failures. I know last year it just crashed, you know, and I'm hoping that's not going to happen, because if I have a laptop issue, then I can't edit the videos. That's the problem. So that's something I need to contend with. But like I say, any donations to the channel is very much appreciated, because it all goes straight back into doing this, you know. The thing I earn from the band, you know, which is not very much, that funds that, you know, so that pays for the fuel, the rehearsal fees, strings and bits and bobs like that. So the gardening, the YouTube kind of helps me do the gardening, the band helps me keep doing that. So the only pleasure I get really is like fishing, when there's no, you know, that's my reward. I have gone, it's kind of been doctor's orders really. They've kind of said, look, you need to do something that's just for you need to get away, because obviously they know the situation. We're looking after my father, and so they've kind of said, you need some time just for you, you know. And because I've always been one of these, I've run around trying to help everyone else, and then I'll get back to what I need to do. But they just kind of told me to be just think about myself a bit more, which I can understand, and it's a hard habit to break over a lifetime of helping people, you know. But yeah, I've got to think about my own sort of personal health, and try and get myself right and some back to normal, because, you know, I couldn't work if I tried anyway, because, you know, I'm not physically capable of having a full-time job. I'm not going to find someone that I can sort of like say I can't come in at the moment because I'm feeling a bit tired, because they won't get it, they won't understand it. That's the thing, it's hard to understand, because you look normal from the outside, but it's a very different thing going inside. So, you know, people I've met in the past who've suffered with chronic fatigue or ME or the fibromyalgia, I can really sympathise with it, you know, being a sufferer of it myself now. That they appear perfectly fine on the outside, but it's a very different thing inside. So thanks for watching, take care, and there'll be some more videos coming soon. See you now, bye bye.